A, which is a shoe there. There's the 8 statements, and all we to do is just read them and pick the 6 that you think go with.
Scarf, we all three of us had a sense of suffocation or being tied up. There was death there. The second one, I felt we all had difficulties with that. The last thing I heard was the bang. I just couldn't really link with the bullet. The first one was being underground.
I don't think I did very well. I didn't have much time to think about it, and I felt a bit under pressure and just said the first thing that came to my head.
In terms of success, I did think that the shoe and the scarf did belong to a woman, and an elderly woman at that. But in terms of the overall success, I wouldn't say I did very well.
I don't think I was very successful at all, besides the things, its physical attributes. I mean, that's obviously an old slug bullet or whatever. I mean, a woman's going to be wearing that shoe and perhaps that sort of scarf. I mean, that's just something physically obvious, but I can't really look into it and say, well, you know, that's an incident surrounding that. It's just...
Been in the First World War, so I came.
As it turned out, the students did better than they thought.
Well, both the psychics and the students could have scored a maximum of 54. In fact, the psychics scored 19 and the students scored 22.
First of all, none of the items are anything that I've dreamed. I wasn't expecting to see any of these items. And what I propose to do now is to take each item in turn and hold it and see if I can see any pictures. I can't see any pictures with item A. The dreams that I had to do with item A were to do with a woman who was murdered, to do with a woman who was murdered possibly by a black man, and I had an area around Tottenham Court Road in London. I thought she had been shot. I was expecting to see a gun. And I do have lots of notes to do with this particular lady who was raped and murdered, and in my dream shot. Item B, well, I don't even know what item B is unless it could be a bullet of some sort. The dreams I had about item B were again a murder and a shooting. I was expecting to see a magazine with 9 bullets. I was also dreaming lots and lots and lots of things to do with bumblebees, and that would translate in the dream normally as coloured people. All I can see when I close my eyes is the face of a man in silhouette, but I don't know any more than that. Item C, I was expecting something that had suffocated or choked somebody, and I was possibly expecting a pillow. I was certainly expecting something of cloth. In the dream there had been a fire and there had been spilt fuel, and from the clues in the dream, I was expecting this to be connected with a gay man or a gay woman, but somebody in the gay community. And I'm feeling choking and suffocation and can't breathe. That's really all I can say at the moment. Expecting the magazine. Is it a bullet? Don't know. I was expecting a magazine, a 9mm, with actually I've got the figure 9. I was expecting from a gun.
Sure.
9mm.
Right. Okay. So we've got a.
No, not to me, to them. I beg pardon. My fault. A quarter century ago, a 71-year-old widow of eccentric nature was in her flat when she disturbed a man found there. He asked her for money, an argument, as a result of which he grabbed hold of the ends of the scarf that she had around her neck and pulled very tight. At that time, it was a capital murder offence that he was charged with, but his defence to the charge was that had he realised that the scarf was actually strangling her, he would have gone back and released it. He was acquitted of murder and convicted of manslaughter. The second object is a case that's very famous in Essex police history, is the murder of Constable Guttridge in 1927. A car was stolen from Billericay, which was subsequently abandoned in Brixton. The officer had stopped it at 3:30 in the morning at a little place called Stapleford Abbots. When he stopped them, he bent down in the headlights to check his pocketbook and started to write when it is alleged the driver got out and shot him in the side of the head. He then fell to the roadside and was laying in a sitting position when the driver came up to him, put a gun into his face and fired into both eyes. The thinking at the time was that the reflection on the retina of the eye was the last thing that somebody would actually see, and it could be recorded. The men were, after a 6 months investigation, arrested and both hanged. The significance of the bullet is that it actually was recovered from the floor, having passed through Constable Guttridge's head, and was one of the early parts of ballistics, because a chap called Churchill, by firing 1,400 revolvers, was able to say that a particular revolver made a particular mark on a bullet. And
could you show the photo?
There is a picture of Constable Guttridge, a little bit earlier than his murder. He'd been in the First World War, so he came back with a different number, 218, but that was his number before he went in. The other case is one of Essex Police's most interesting cases, and is known as the Moat Farm murder of 1899 to 1903. A man called Samuel Herbert Dougal, a former Royal Engineers Sergeant Major, had a number of mistresses. It's alleged that he could have had children running into well into double figures.
Just hold me there for a second. That's going well. But can we pick it up again on that last one?
Start again.
No, just on the shoe. Right. Another board, okay? Another board.
Why are they not doing this? There was no connection with black people in any of this.
I'm running. Hang on, just a minute. I'll try and remember that just a moment. Yes, I'm thinking hard.
He's going to reveal the...
Thinking hard.
Right, thank you. Running.
In the final case, a Sergeant Major of Royal Engineers was a philanderer, and at one stage had got many mistresses. He married 3 times and fathered many children. The came to Essex with his mistress and moved into a house with a live-in maid. After a scene one night between himself and the live-in maid, there was an argument with him and his mistress, who I can show you a picture now. That is she, Camille Cecile Holland. They decided to go out for a ride in the horse and trap the following day, which was sometime in April 1899, and at that stage she was shot in the head. She was buried and her body remained under the ground for 4 years. After rumours of his mistresses around the village began to become rife, police started an investigation, and it led to a long digging session led by somebody who's present, an actual witness to the murder who we got present today, and the body was subsequently found, and the shoes were taken off, and the cobbler in London said, "I made those shoes for Miss Holland back in 1897." And on that evidence and on other parts that are available, he was hanged in 1903. If I might, I'll just refer you to the witness to the murder, who is Jacko, a Spitz dog who was the property of Miss Holland and who was witness to the murder, certainly ran around the yard for many, many years afterwards, for 4 years afterwards, and is photographed in our museum with the police officers, so we're sure that the dog that we recovered 75 years later is the same dog.
Thank you very much.
Look, right. Could you just stand in position again?
Yes, sir.
With the people around you. I'm just going to take some shots of you listening. Yep. So, if you like, you could ask Fred any questions you want.
I wondered whether this gentleman in the middle had any connection.
If everybody could keep looking at Fred. Yes, okay.
214, 1.
Okay.
Constable Guttridge was a policeman in many parts of Essex, and I've no reason to believe that he didn't come in. I couldn't really answer that question honestly. He may well have come to contact
But the murderers were not coloured.
No, one was a Liverpool Irishman who was known as the Fenian Sniper, and another man that came from the village in Leigh-on-Sea where I live myself, a man called Frederick Guy Brown, was a South London car proprietor and a motor bandit as described in 1927. But whether they had any coloured connection, I wouldn't know.
Just keep looking at Fred. So you're listening. Yeah.
Is there anything else I can help with at all about these? You'd like to know? Or have I explained it? Oh, as long as I can.
Okay, thank you very much. Take some shots of these.
Where are they kept?
In the Essex Police Museum at Chelmsford. Of course, you haven't seen Samuel Herbert Dougal, the Moat Farm murderer. The man who looked very much like
Could you pick him up again and,
sorry.
and tell us about that?
Yeah.
And of course, so if you see a hand of course, the murderer. Running forward. I'm running.
215, kid 1.
Okay, Fred. Yeah, pick him up. That's who he is.
This is Samuel Herbert Dougal, a man who at the age of 53 was still able to command a number of teenage mistresses in one village and looked rather like the late Edward VII, who he was contemporary of. Perhaps he modelled his appearance on Edward VII, but certainly a fatal attraction to very, very many women.
Put him down. Okay. Thanks a lot. That's it. Oh, I tell you what, I want to take a very wide shot.
Please talk to him.
No,
Let's do it now. Why don't we do it?
my first dream for item B, was the murder of the man who was talking in the dream was PC Keith Blakelock, and he said the murder of a policeman. And I thought to
Could you just
myself,
close it again as you go?
it is murder, because in the dream I had a policeman was killed. And that's why I wondered about the black people, because it's alleged that it was
Yes.
black people that killed him.
I see.
Yeah.
But the dream notes that I faxed to these people 2 weeks before today was all to do with Keith Blakelock being murdered, a policeman.
I see. Well, that of course would be in the Metropolitan Police area,
Yes.
which we don't have any.
Yeah, but we didn't know where you were coming
No,
from.
I'm not pleased you didn't.
Yeah.
Could you pick up the point of the scarf, Fred, as though you were just about to start telling the story there? That's it. And start the story on that one.
The story of the scarf relates to something that happened over a quarter of a century ago.
That's good. Okay. Right. Do you want to do a big reaction?
Well, actually, I would have maybe Fred might ask for.
Quicker. If you.
Yeah.
Would you,
Where would I stand?
just beside camera. I'll do it.
What do you want me to ask them?
Yeah.
Well, it's all right. I think I'll do it.
Yeah, okay.
Because what I want
What could do?
to
Fred,
ask
if
you.
you'd like, we're finished.
Right.
It's 1 o'clock.
Well, thank you. It's nice to meet you all. I'm trying to have a lot of time. I've got an urgent appointment in Southend-on-Sea in an hour's
That's
time,
right.
which I promised to be.
You're gonna have to fly.
Yes,
Exactly.
I'll be there.
And I'll just do close-ups of them.
Thank you. Can I... I'll just get myself organised and come back in a moment.
Right.
What I wanted to do was ask each of you, how successful on balance you think that you've been, with your predictions, and what in particular you'd single out as being good or bad that you got. So I'd just ask you all very briefly, whether you've had any success, and I'd just like to know how you respond to it.
What do we say now?
Wait 1 minute.
Be patient.
Match is a bit better.
I had no idea that shoots. I don't, because it's a bit small, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, I thought it was a little person.
Who are you going to ask first of all, Steve?
I'll ask you, Chris. We'll start with that.
Taking the original dream.
Just broader. Dave?
Get in nice and quiet outside, please. Polite request.
Running.
When I was first asked to do this, and I asked you to label the items A, B and C, the first dream I had about A was to do with the death of a woman who had been brutally murdered and raped and assaulted. And that's the fundamental theme of that, although I don't think the way I answered the questions will have any bearing on that. Item B, the first thing that I dreamt was the murder of PC Keith Blakelock, and Keith is all the way through, and it was to do with his murder, and I woke up thinking of these black people that had allegedly hacked him to pieces. Item C I knew was to do with a woman, but I've got all the way through mine something to do with a baby and a pram and a bottle of milk, but I didn't know what that was, and I still don't.
Right, who would like to?
I think we'll go to Marie next. Have you? I don't know whether you had any success or not with your.
Well, I didn't have much time to think about